Hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us for tonight's PBS KVIE Bob Ross Virtual Paint Along. I'm a certified Bob Ross instructor in both landscape and floral, and I'm happy to have you joining me for tonight's painting, which is Meadow Lake. And that's from Bob Ross's Joy of Painting, Season 2, Episode 1. And of course, when we do the painting, we won't be using the full array of paints that Bob used. So we want to make sure that we won't have quite as colorful a painting as he did, but we're going to try and make it nice and fall colored. And hopefully you've all watched your preparation video and got your palette ready and got your canvas ready with the liquid white so we can get started. I want to remind everybody, if for some reason you're not able to keep up, we are going to be recording this video and they will be sending out a link so that you'll be able to go back and rewatch it as many times as you like and pause it where you need to and then fast forward when you need to so that you can actually do the whole painting again if you want to, or if you just want to watch tonight and then actually do the painting with the recording so that you can stop it as we go along, then that's perfect too. Okay, so we're going to get started. We're going to transfer the picture of me to the picture of my canvas, and we'll show you my palette once in a while so you can see how I'm loading the brushes as well. And we have our canvas already set to go with our liquid white. And I'm going to start off with my 1-inch white-handled brush. And we want to go into some liquid or the phthalo blue. And can you see the palette? Yes. Okay, so I'm just loading my brush. I think you can see the palette, maybe not. It's really small though. Okay. Okay, so I'm loading my brush. You can see as I'm just pulling a little bit of that blue down into the tips of my bristles and then spreading it out on the canvas or on the palette and then flipping it over and swipe, swipe, swipe to get it loaded on both sides. So I don't have a ton of paint in my brush, just some of that blue. And we're going to start with our painting up in the corners so that those will be the darkest areas, and then we'll work our way to the middle and we'll work our way about halfway down. Okay, and I'm just going to start in the corners, and we're using that little crisscross stroke that Bob Ross always liked to use, little X's, and you can see that the blue is blending in with the liquid white that we already have on our canvas, which is perfect. And like I said, just those little crisscross X strokes, or sometimes people like to just not even lift their brush from the canvas and they call it more of a figure 8 on its side. But however you want to do that, that's perfect. We just want to get that blend going so we get that nice phthalo blue up into our sky. And you can see there's some areas of my sky that are lighter and some that are darker. And I'm just kind of blending those out so it and it doesn't have to be all uniform. You know, if you ever look at the sky, sometimes it's darker in patches and there's little white areas. And we're going to be putting some clouds up here anyway. So, you know, what's a sky without some happy clouds, right? Okay, I think that looks good for a start. And I'm just going to softly blend it back and forth to about right there. Now, I'm going to want some water down here because this is called Meadow Lake after all. So I'm going to take some more of that blue, if you want to switch to my palette. And we'll load up that brush again on both sides. Now when I do it this way, we're not going to use the crisscross strokes for the water. We want very, very even horizontal strokes, and we want them coming in from the sides. And I'm going to start up here and just pull in straight. We want our water lines to be very straight. And as I get towards the middle of the canvas, I lift the brush away. so that I leave a nice kind of soft edge to that inside uh, of the brush strokes. And I'm loading my brush again, both sides, swipe, swipe, swipe through the phthalo blue, flip it over, swipe, swipe, swipe through the phthalo blue, flip it over, and then I'm going to pull in from the other side. And again, I start with my brush touching the canvas, and then I pull away as I pull in. And like I said, we want these nice and vertical. And the reason for this is our water. And if we don't have these, or excuse me, nice and horizontal, if we don't have these strokes nice and horizontal, it'll look like the water is just pouring out of our canvas. And then the floor, as Bob would say, would get all wet. So I'm just leaving this nice white area in the middle as a reflection from the light of the sky coming across my water. And then I'm going to take my brush and just lightly, very lightly, as Bob would say, 3 hairs and some air, we're going to go across the entire canvas very lightly, just to kind of smooth that out a little bit so that the reflection isn't just a big white blob in the middle. Okay, so now I've got my brush. It's got all this blue paint on it. We're not going to even worry about that right now. We're going to set that down, and we're going to pick up our fan brush. And I'm going to take the fan brush, and we're going to load it the same way, but we're going to load it with some white. We're going to pull some of that white down from our little 2 Hershey's Kisses of white, and I'm pulling it across my palette. I'm flipping the brush, pulling it across, flipping the brush, pulling it across. I want to make sure that I'm getting some of that paint all over the brush so that it's going to give us some nice clouds. So I'm swipe, 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 flip, swipe, 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 flip, and then I'm going to do just a little push. And when I push it, I'm only pushing it like 1/8 of an inch, not very far at all. And I see that little ridge I get on the palette, and I get a little ridge of paint on my brush as well. Now, the key to Bob Ross paintings is, number 1, how you load the brush, and number 2, how you apply the brush then to the canvas. So I've got this brush all loaded up, and I just want to go, if you notice, I'm holding my brush at an angle so that it's kind of flat almost against my canvas, right? I'm holding it like this, but I'm turning one corner towards the canvas because I'm just going to use that little corner of my brush to start with. And I'm going to move it in circles as I push the paint into the canvas, into my blue to start my cloud. So here we go. Let's go cloud. Now I'm kind of blending out a lot of that white with the blue that's already up there in my sky. So I'm going to flip my brush over. So now I'm using the other point. You can see this side has a lot of blue, but the other side's still pure white. And then I'm going to continue my cloud, little circles. Okay, now I've got all this blue on here. I don't want my clouds to disappear into the blue. So I'm going to take down to my palette. I've got a paper towel here, and I'm going to wipe off that excess blue before I load up some more white. So again, it doesn't have to be totally gone. We're just getting the excess off. There might be still a little blue color on the edge, but you can see what's coming off on my paper towel is pretty much just white now. So then we go back to the pile of paint. We pull some out. Swipe, 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 get it all the way to the corners, flip it over, swipe, 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 and I'm turning my brush so I'm getting those corners loaded up with some of that paint, and I'm just swipe, 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 then flip and push, a little ridge of paint right there, and we're going to go back to the canvas for some more clouds. Here we go. We're just going to push up. Oh, there we go. We've got some nice clouds happening there now. And then push up again. Okay, so when Bob lays down his clouds, he starts off with that part where we use the fan brush. And again, I'm wiping off the excess blue on my paper towel here before I go to load it back up again. Swipe, swipe, swipe. Swipe, 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 and I'm making sure it gets all the way to the corners. Swipe, 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 and it's up in the brush. You can kind of see it's on both sides. Then a little push, so I get that little ridge of paint. And then I'm going to go back in the other direction. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we've got our clouds up there. That's our first layer of clouds. So I'm going to wipe off the excess blue from my fan brush again. And then I'm going to set that down because I'm going to be doing some more clouds once I'm ready. But right now, I'm going to flip this paper towel closed and get rid of some of the excess blue on this brush. So we want to wipe it on the paper towel, and I'm just wiping it against that like I'm brushing the paper towel with the brush. And so I'm getting more color out, because I don't want, when I go to blend my clouds, I don't want all that blue coming back and disappearing all my white. So again, I'm just getting the excess out. I'm flipping my little paper towel over, getting more blue out. And if you have extra brushes, you could just switch brushes at this point. But for those of us who only have one of each kind, we want to clean between so we don't make our clouds completely blue. So I got a lot of that paint out on our paper towel, but I'm going to grab one of my baby wipes now and get more of it out. And you can see less is coming out now. That means the outer edges of the brush have less of this paint in them. So I'm on my baby wipe now, and I'm just wiping, wiping, wiping. And then if I flip over to this side, you can see very little blue is coming out at this point. Well, maybe there's still a lot. So about to there, I think if I went to a blank paper towel now, it's not have a lot of color in it. So I'm going to take this brush now and we're going to go up to our clouds and kind of blend out underneath. So I like these big white edges on the tops of my clouds, but we want the bottoms to kind of blend out completely. So as Bob would say, we're just going to use the corner of the brush and we're going to kind of spin it in circles and pull some of that white down into the body of the clouds. So I don't want to mess up the top edge, but I'm using like 3 hairs. Okay, maybe I'm using 4 hairs and some air to just circle, circle, circle to blend out the bottoms of those clouds. And I blend them out until they almost disappear into the blue, right? But I still have that nice top edge that's nice and sharp. And I'm just pulling that out, pulling it out, and blending those down into my sky. And again, just circle, 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 like that. So now I have this nice paler area where I can stand out some more clouds. Going back to my fan brush, I'm going to load it up. I already wiped off the excess blue, and I'm loading it up again. I'm swipe, swipe, swiping through that white paint. And swipe, swipe, swiping, flip it over, swipe again, and then a little bit of a push. Now I can start my next cloud, and maybe my next cloud's gonna come up a little higher, and I'm using, again, the corner of the brush. See, I've got my hand kind of this way, and I'm just pointing that corner towards the canvas, and I'm gonna circle around. And then I flip it over, and I'm gonna circle around again. And this one's gonna come down lower. Now I've got all this blue again on my paint, on my fan brush. So I'm going to wipe it off on a clean paper towel to get the excess blue out. And again, like I told you before, if you can't keep up with me, just take a break. And when you get the recording, you can pause it as much as you like while you're painting. And I'm getting all that excess blue out. Then I'm loading back up the brush with some white, titanium white there. Swipe, 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 getting it all onto the corners as well as the middle, and then flipping it over, swipe, 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 and a little push there at the end. And we're going to bring this down here and bring in some more clouds. Flip the corner, bring in some more clouds. And then again, I'm wiping off the excess blue, reloading my brush, swipe, 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 flip, swipe, 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 and a little push. There we go. All right, so I'm going to bring this cloud up here, up and down. Again, little circles. Flip it to the other corner, little circles. And then set that down. Now we've got our 1-inch brush again, and we're going to go back in and swipe out or blend out the underneath of the clouds. So we want to keep those nice top edges, and I'm just using that corner to kind of pull some of that paint down that's up on the edges, but we don't want to mess up those top edges of our cloud. And then I can go the other way with the other corner and just blend it out till it disappears. And go back the other way. There we go. And you can have as many or as few clouds as you want. It's up to you, but every cloud deserves a little friend, so it's good to have at least a couple up there. And I think we're going to do one more little cloud. Let's see. I want to blend that out so it's just ever so lightly. There we go. So I'm taking my fan brush again, and I'm wiping it off, so get off the excess blue from my sky. And then I'm loading it up again with some more of my titanium white. Swipe, 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 flip, swipe, 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 flip, and then a little push, and maybe another little cloud right up here. And I just use the corner and then bring it down. And again, if I want to get a little bit more of that blue off and add a little bit more white, come in on the other side with another little cloud. Every cloud deserves a little friend. Now, if you have something that you don't like up in your sky, like Bob says, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. The baby wipes are great for going in and pulling off a little bit. And what you do when you want to pull off a mistake, not a mistake, a happy accident, you would want to take your wet wipe and kind of wrap it around your finger so you don't get it all over the canvas, but you just go in and take out whatever little area that you don't like with just your fingertip with the wet wipe wrapped around it. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to do one more little cloud. Again, with the corner of your brush, right in there, little circles, little circles, little circles, and then I flip to the other corner, right there, and just like that. Okay, so I can put my fan brush down, go back to my 1-inch again, and we're just going to blend the bottoms of these ones out. And you blend them out until they kind of disappear into the sky below. And that's how we do our clouds. Little circles, little circles. And I can switch corners and go in the other direction. And the clouds just kind of blend out. Now, I've got some excess blue on my 1-inch brush now. So I want to take that and wipe it off again on a paper towel. And again, I'm brushing the brush against the paper towel to get out all of that excess blue. And I like to turn my paper towels over and inside out and everything so that I get all that excess color out. And then we're just going to use a very light stroke to blend up our clouds just a little bit. Again, I'm just cleaning all the excess blue out of this brush onto my paper towel. And then 3 hairs and some air, we're going to go in here to our canvas and we're going to use kind of a lifting circular stroke. So I'm going to be lifting just very lightly the tops edges of the clouds, and there might be some little strings of paint that come out. That's okay, doesn't matter. Our clouds are kind of wispy. These are light wispy clouds that we have going on here today, and we're just kind of little circular lifts. And then I can go back the other way on the other side, just little circular lifts depending upon which side of the cloud I'm doing. And there. So I've got all these kind of little stringy things at the top. That's okay. I'm going to take my brush, wipe it off again really quickly. And then I'm going to go back up to the top and I'm going to just lightly, just 2 hairs and some air, go back and forth across my canvas. And I'm hitting my lights so they're wiggling all around. But this kind of softens up my clouds to where they just kind of real misty clouds up there. And that's kind of it for our clouds. Now, if you have some little strings up in here above in the blue areas that you don't like sticking out, some people don't like those, we just can take the brush and kind of lightly right at the edge of the tops without messing up the tops of the clouds, just mush those strings back in. Just like that. And I think that's good. I kind of like my clouds right there. So just wherever it looks like you need. And if you have something that's really blobby, you can always take your wet wipe and wrap it around your finger and wipe it out if you don't like it. But I think that's a nice little soft cloudy sky for us today. So we're going to go from there. And again, I'm just going to wipe off the excess paint out of my brush. I'm even using the same paper towel I used before because I just want the excess out, because when we add our other colors, it's okay if there's a little blue left in there. So we're going to set this aside. And now we're going to pick up our knife. Everybody should have a palette knife. This is a number 5 palette knife. And I'm going to throw my little pile of paper towels away because I've got more over here. And I'll have one ready to go. But I've got my palette knife, and we're going to start deciding where we want our mountain to be. And we're going to have several peaks of our mountain, but we want to start with our dark color. That's this one next to the phthalo blue, this color that's a combination of the blue, the green, and the red that we mixed up during our prep video. And I'm just going to pull some of that down nice and flat. And you can see I'm using my knife very flat and just pulling out a nice thin layer of this mountain mix that we made. And then I'm going to wipe it off on my towel, the knife, so I have it nice and clean so I can see it when I really load up my little rolls of paint. So to do your roll of paint, Bob kind of usually sweeps across like that. And you can see, let's see, where's my camera? Oh, okay. There's a nice little roll of paint on there. Maybe you can see it. There, little roll of paint. The other way to do it, I'm going to wipe this back off onto my palette. And if you can't get a nice thin little roll when you do it like Bob does it, you can just take your knife and scrape like that till you have a nice thin little roll. Same again like that. I don't know if you can, maybe there. Now it's more in the light. So just a thin little roll of the mountain mix paint. And I got to decide here where I want my main peak of my mountain to be. Preferably not perfectly centered. And we don't want to cover up our beautiful clouds that we created, but we could bring it up into the clouds maybe. So I'm going to start off with one peak right up here. And I'm just going to bring it down. This is a jaggedy peak. And then I get another little roll of paint. Don't switch. And I'm going to get this side of the peak going. And then I'm scraping off any excess paint I have. And if I want it to be a little bit more jaggedy, we don't really want our mountains to look too perfectly triangular. So we might want to stick out a little bit of jaggy edges here and there, and then scrape off the excess paint. So that's a nice little jaggedy mountain top. And then I might want another one next to it. We don't know yet if they're going to be in front or behind, but I just grab another little roll of paint, and I'm going to come in here and maybe put one right about here. And again, if I don't want it to be too perfectly straight on the edges, I can just throw in some little jaggedy parts and then bring it down. So I've got two. Now, if you ever watch Bob while he's painting, he usually keeps his mountain peaks kind of in the middle here and leaves these areas on the side blank. And there's a good reason for that, because when we go to put in our trees way over here on the edges, it'll be a lot easier if we don't have to fight with the paint that we already have up there for our mountains and our snow and our mountain shadows. So we want to keep our mountains kind of centered, not perfectly in the center. And I guess I did put that one a little bit too much in the middle. I'm going to make it go over a little bit. See? Not a mistake, just a happy accident. So I could show you how to move a mountain over. You didn't know you were that powerful, did you? You could move mountains. Okay, so we want one more peak, maybe right in. I'll make this one higher again. There. And then I'm going to do the other side of it. I need more rolls of paint on my knife there. I'm going to bring out some more, flatten out some more paint, and then get another little roll. There we go. And back up. And now you can see I'm not leaving my mountains empty. There's color here in the middles of them, so it's not just a big upside down V there, but I am just kind of jagging out the edges, and they're kind of flat here underneath. That's kind of how we want them to be. So I'm going to take my knife, just scrape out any of that excess paint that's in there. And you can hear that I'm scraping pretty well to get, we are not only pushing the paint into the canvas, but we're scraping off the excess so that we don't pick up all that black again when we go to put on our snow and our shadows. So I'm wiping off my knife. I'm going to set that aside. Now I've got my 1-inch brush again. And I'm just going to take this and I'm going to smooth out my mountains. So I'm going to pull up right in here, and you can see I'm just taking it right up to the edge. I don't want to ruin that edge of my mountain, but I'm kind of just pulling that paint down, and I'm going to go right up in here into the point of my mountain and pull that paint down into my jaggedy edges and pull that paint down, and I'm going to sweep it out at the edge. Sweep it out so it kind of blends out there into nothing. And then I'm going to do that with all of my mountain peaks. I'm just getting in there, getting right up to that edge, and then sweeping it out to the sides. And this kind of gives you the slopes of your mountains without having slopes yet. We don't really know where those ridges are going to be, but we just keep, I'm going to get right up into those edges and pull that paint down and sweep it out to the side. And sweep it out to the side. And then we can do little soft crisscrossy strokes down in here. Once we have our mountains all pulled, all that excess paint pulled down, and just softly, softly crisscross strokes down at the bottom. And kind of blend it out till where it gets mixing with that remaining blue underneath them and that white that we had on the surface. And now we've got kind of clouds, misty clouds back in the distance. So that's a good way to start, I think. And if there's anything you want to brush out, they're good. So we're going to put it down our 1-inch brush. We're going to go back to our knife and we're going to pull out some white paint because we're going to put snow on our mountains. So we're going to do that the same way we did with the mountain mix. We're going to pull out our white paint in a nice thin layer. You know, I'm pulling it out about 4 to 5 inches, so I have a nice big area that I can go in and pick up my little rolls of paint from. So there we go. So I've got my knife. Now it's got a thin layer of white on there. It doesn't really matter. It's not gonna mess me up. I can wipe it off if I want. I don't have to. It's kind of up to you. And then we're going to grab another little roll of paint, this time white, and this is going to be our snow. Now this is a very easy to get way too much snow on your mountains. So I'm going to show you how I hold my knife so that I don't get too much snow. I've got 1 thumb and 2 fingers. And I'm holding it just like that. We don't want to push on the knife with our finger like this because that's pushing the knife too tight into the canvas and we don't want to do that. We want the paint to touch the canvas, but we don't want the knife to touch the canvas when we're doing our snow. So this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to start up at the top of a little peak and let's start with this little peak over here. I'm going to just start and you'll see I'm putting this edge of the knife, the long edge of the knife, against the long edge of the mountain. And when I pull it down, this corner is going to come away, but this corner is going to follow that edge the whole way. So watch me when I do it, and then I'll show you again so you can do it yourself. So I'm going to put it right there. And again, the paint is touching, but the knife is not. I'm barely just pulling it out. So there's a little bit of snow on my mountain. And I'll wipe off the excess in case I picked up any of the dark color. Add another little roll of paint. And again, I'm going up to my mountain. I'm kind of missed that little peak right there. So I'm going to put that up in there, and you can kind of jiggle your knife too as you pull it back. And again, that corner is following the edge of the previous paint. There we go. Look at that. And it's that easy. The more you wiggle it, the more little breaks you get in your paint. You kind of want that. That kind of gives texture to your mountain. So again, I'm going to put another little roll on my knife. And I'm going to come up and maybe I'm going to do this peak right here. I'm going to get right in on that side. And again, the paint is touching the canvas, but the knife is not. And I'm just going to wiggle it, wiggle it, wiggle it. And maybe I'm going to pull it over and it's going to meet that other line of snow that we have, just like that. And then I'm pulling out my paint again, a nice flat layer of the titanium white, wiping off the excess so I can see my little roll, scooping up a little roll of paint, just like that, and going back up to my mountain. Now, maybe we don't want all our ridges kind of curving over to the side, so maybe this ridge is going to go a little bit this way first. So I'm going to put my ridge, or put my paint right there where it touches, and then maybe I'll wiggle it this way a little bit. Ooh, that ridge is coming over. And then I'll bring it back. Oh, and turn it around and down. And again, just barely touching, and you can see it kind of shaped a little hill here, and it made the ridge kind of move over that way. And that's what we want. We want little mountains that are kind of wiggling all over the place. We don't want little pyramids. If we wanted pyramids, we just take out our ruler and draw up our pyramids. So I'm getting another roll of paint onto my knife. And then I'm going to go up and again, maybe, let's see, I want to do this ridge. Maybe it's coming back this way a little bit. So I'm going to bring it back and it's going to go over and then whoosh, just barely scraping on the canvas down there at the edge. That's looking good. That's what Bob would say. He'd say, that's looking good. I'm liking that mountain. Now, since I've got this kind of shorter peak up here, and if I use the whole edge of my knife, I'd cut into this other one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the short end of my knife, this edge here, to get my little roll of paint. So again, I'm just swiping a nice flat area, and then I'm grabbing a little roll of paint on the short edge of my knife. There you can see it. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start it right here at the tip of my peak. And then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to pull down. And oh, there's a little shadow over there that I didn't want to take away. We want to leave those little shadow areas where we can bring in our shadow color when we're done with our snow. But let's go ahead and continue putting snow on our mountains. We got a nice big layer of white. We catch a little roll of paint and we go up and we're going to do our next peak. Let's see, let's do this one right here. Oh, let me see. Maybe I want to bring this one out a little bit more. So I'm just bringing it down and over and turning it and sweeping it out. And I got a little bit of my black mountain color on there, so I just wiped it off and it'll get covered up with the tree anyway. So I'm just wiping off my knife again, getting another little roll of paint, and we're going to go up to the next peak. Let's see, let's do this one here. And again, I'm touching the very corner top to the tip, the tip of the peak, and just the paint is touching, and I'm just holding it with those two fingers and my thumb and then turning it and bringing it over to meet that other pile of snow. There we go. Now getting another little roll of paint and back up. Maybe I'm going to go up to this peak now. And we're just going to bring that over, whoosh, down. And again, it barely scrapes. At the beginning, only the paint is touching. As you pull down, maybe the knife touches a little bit on the canvas and you might hear a little scrape. But up at the top, you're just getting, I'm going to put a little bit more in here, I think. And Bob always says it helps to make little noises when you're doing this. Sweep your paint down the mountainside. Now I've got another peak that needs some highlight, and you know, in my painting, the sun is on the right side of my mountains. But if you're left-handed and you want to put the snow on the left side of your mountains, you can do that too. And I'm just going to go up in here, and I want this, I got a little blob at the end that I don't want to, there we go. I want to just pull this in here and get that corner there and just pull down, pull down, pull down, and then maybe over this way, and then maybe like that. There we go. We got these nice big shadow areas that we can go fill in with some shadow color in a minute. But we want to get our snow on the tops of our mountains first. So I'm getting another little roll, and again, we're going to jag it over this way a little bit, and then turn and roll down. And then I'm going to do, I think, one more little roll of white. And again, I'm just putting it there and pulling it out. So now we have all our snow on our mountains. And now we want to put in some shadow color. So we're going to take some of our, I think I've got just a little bit of phthalo blue left. This is pretty much all I'll need it for. So I'm going to take that phthalo blue and add a little bit of this mountain color mix and a little bit of white. So I'm mixing these together, and if I get a nice light kind of gray blue, not too light but not too dark. See, I'm adding white until I get it a nice kind of mid-tone. You don't want it too dark, but you don't want it too light, because it's supposed to be the shadows, but it's supposed to be snow in the shadows. Okay, so I've got this color, and again, I can wipe off my knife and get myself a new paper towel. And I'm going to start now. A lot of these areas that I have shadow in are really kind of small, so I want to take just a small corner of my knife, the small edge, the short edge, and just get a little roll of paint on there. Just that short edge. And then I'm going to turn it over and bring it right into my shadow corners and just kind of get up into those little craggy parts and bring it down. And again, you want to follow the slope of the mountain with your shadows, just like we followed the slope of the mountain with our snow. So I'm getting another little roll of paint, and I'm getting up in here, and I'm going to put it right up next to that white, and I'm going to bring it down. Like I said, Bob says it's always good to make little noises. And if I actually altered the edge of this mountain when I was pulling my shadow down, that's okay. No big deal. Now it's a little bit different shape. And I'm just going to go back in here and pull down my little shadow colors. I want to pull it right along where the snow ends, and then make sure it goes all the way to the edge of that paint. Again, you don't need it to be solid. If it breaks here and there, that's a good thing, because it kind of gives your mountain a little bit more dimension. And then I'm just going to go back in here and just fill in these little shadow areas right there, right up to where the snow starts again. And then I've got this real skinny little one there, and I'm just going to fill that in with a little blue, my shadow color, blue-gray, and then there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to keep doing that. If you're running out of color, you can pull a little bit more down. I've got still some of that blue. I'm going to add a little mountain color to it. Again, a little more white. And again, I'm going to get a little roll of paint right there on my knife. And then on this side, I'm going to pull down. And again, pulling in the direction of the slope. So on this side, it goes the other way. And I ran out of paint, so I'm going to scoop up a little more and get right in there. And then another roll, go right up in here, and I kind of push that white back a little bit with the blue so it goes right up to the edge. And then I'm going to turn my knife so I don't scrape out into the sky. We don't want our shadow to be on the sky. We want it to be on the mountain. So I'm going to use the short edge again to fill in any areas where I might have missed. Okay, load that up again, the short edge, come back in if there's any little places we missed. Let's see, maybe there. And here you can kind of hear, I barely have any paint, so you can hear my knife scraping against the canvas there. I'm getting one more little roll and just pulling out from here. Okay, so now that I've got that, I've got nice highlights, I've got my nice shadows, and we want to just soften everything up at the bottom. So I'm going back to my 1-inch brush, and I'm getting my palette out of the center here, but we're going back to the 1-inch brush. We're going to wipe off any excess paint onto our paper towels, because we picked up a lot of that black, that mountain color, when we were sweeping out the bottoms of our mountains. So we want to make sure we get all that black color out of there so we don't cloud or muddy up our painting. So now mostly what's coming out is blue, and my brush is fairly clean. And what we want to do is just tap, tap, tap to kind of misty out the bottom edges. And I'm kind of tapping again in the direction of the slopes. So I'm kind of coming up, tapping out, and kind of following the slopes up to tap them out. And same on this side. I did the white areas first so that when I tapped into the blue, I wouldn't spread it all over everywhere. So there we are. And then again, I'm going to wipe my brush off, wipe it off really well. I'm going to go to a clean paper towel this time. So you can see we want it really, really clean this time, because we're going to just swipe and kind of misty up that bottom area of the mountains. So I'm getting all this excess out. You can see that what the color that's coming out is much lighter now. And we're going getting that excess color out, and with a very light hand, 2 hairs and some air, we're going to just sweep, like misty up the bottom. So we're kind of pulling some of that liquid white that's still in between the blue and the mountains. And then I'm going to sweep back the other way just to kind of misty all this up down at the bottom. And we sweep kind of up into those slopes. Sorry, I don't know if you can see with my hand in the way. And then I'm just going to kind of softly blend out the bottoms of these mountains. So we've got kind of a nice misty area down here at the bottoms of our mountains. Now, we're going to go ahead and put in some foothills. And when we do that, we want to make sure that our foothills stay kind of down in this area so that we have some of this misty area still between the foothills and the mountains, so that that kind of gives us some distance. And we're going to start that with some of this sap green. Sap green is what it's called. That's the one we have over here in this corner. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of my mountain color to darken it up just a tad. And even if I have a little blue left, I'm going to pull some of that blue over too to give my foothills a little bluish green. So I'm going to pull that into here and just swipe, 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 flip, swipe, 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 flip, so that all of that color is the nice green color there in my brush. Okay, so now we're going to go to the canvas, and I can actually tap, tap, tap on my palette as well. Once I get that, sorry, we're going to go back to the palette for a second. Okay, so I'm just tap, tap, tapping. I swiped to get it into the brush. Now I'm tap, tap, tapping to kind of spread those bristles out a little bit. And I'm just tapping the front of the brush into the the front edge of the brush into the paint. Now we go back to the canvas. And I'm going to do the same thing, the tapping onto the canvas, and kind of place my foothills where I want them. And they're not going to be straight foothills. Some are going to be higher. Some are going to be lower. Maybe that one comes up a little bit more over here. And as I tap, 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 as I go down, the paint kind of gets lighter and lighter, and it kind of gets in with the blue or the white that's there, the liquid white. We want the bottom edges to be somewhat flat. So we've got our hills on top, but we want to bring down that color. Like that. Okay. And it's kind of up to you. If you want to have foothills all the way into the background, you can. If you want to leave a little space for maybe a little river that's coming into our meadow lake, you can do that too. So I'm reloading my brush again with that sap green. And some of that blue I'm pulling in, and maybe a little bit of that mountain mix. And then I'm going to bring my hill in from the other side. Now, like I said, if you want to leave a little space for some water coming through from behind, maybe there's like a little narrow area where the water continues on the other side, or maybe it's a river that's actually coming into our lake here. We don't know. It's your world. You get to say. So I'm going to go ahead and tap in another hill on this side, and maybe I'll just leave a little space down there where, oh, look, maybe there's water coming from back there. Maybe there's a little river there. I don't know. And then I'm going to just tap, tap, tapping to bring that bottom edge of this foothill nice and straight. Now, what I can do here is very, very short strokes on these little foothills. At the top, I'm going to take this brush and just very, like, not even a 1/4 inch stroke. I'm just going to pull straight up. Just a little 1/4 inch stroke right back here, and I can flip my brush a little bit. And that makes it look like there's tiny little trees way back in the distance on the top of our hills. We're going to do it on this side too. Like I said, just little 1/4 inch strokes. And then you can tap in underneath them again just to smooth out any lines we left while we were doing the strokes. Just tapping that out, tapping that out. Okay, now I've got so many lights here, it's hard for me to see the color on the canvas. Sometimes I'm just putting a little darker area in here. Okay, now we're going to set aside our 1 inch brush, and we are going to pick up our fan brush again. Okay, so my fan brush has a lot of white and blue still on it, so I'm going to squeeze out some excess paint from there. And I'm squeezing it out, and we're gonna, it has a little blue and white on it, that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and pull some of this blue, pull some of this darker color, pull some of this sap green, and we're just gonna do like a small layer of faraway trees, not quite as far away as these on our canvas, but a little bit closer, but still so far that they're not really defined. So we're going to take our brush, we've got our fan brush with this green color on it now, and we want to just tap in the trees. And I'm going to actually add a little bit more of that dark mountain color to my green to make these darker so that they'll show up against that foothill background. because we don't want it just to look like one big blob of green. We want them to have some separation so that they look closer. So here I have with my darker color now. It should show up better than this original one. And I'm just tapping in these trees. And some of them are going to be taller and some of them are going to be shorter. So I'm kind of staggering the line of my trees. So, and I'm just tapping. And it's okay if they come down here into my water because that'll give me something to make a reflection from. And I'm just loading it up again. And again, you want to kind of stagger the height of the trees. So some up taller, some down shorter, but they're kind of all touching. So there's a lot of trees. There's like a forest back there. So you can't really tell where one stops and the next one begins. And we kind of want that. We want that just kind of continuous trees back here. And we kind of do that over here. I'm going to leave some space over here because I'm going to put some other bigger trees in here, and I don't want this bunch of trees to muddy up what I'm going to do with those trees. So we're going to have some fall color trees. We want some oranges, some reds, some yellow. So we don't want too much of this other darker color on there in the way of those. So I'm just loading up my brush again, and I'm going to come back here on the other side of my little river coming in, or my inlet, and just start putting more trees. Maybe some are taller. So I'm getting a staggered line of my little trees, and I'm loading up my brush again, and I'm going back in there and see I've covered up some of the tops of my foothills, but that's okay because these trees are close, so they might cover up some of those foothills in the background. And again, I'm going to leave some space over on the side so that I have some room to put some other bigger trees in the front, in the foreground. So now that I've got these trees, distant trees in here, I'm going to take my 1-inch brush and I'm just going to pull down. And that's going to give me a nice reflection of the trees in the water. Now these trees right here are shorter, so I'm not pulling down as far. Same here, this side, because this is getting to where the land's going back. It's thinner. There's not going to be as much of a reflection right here. And you want to pull your reflections straight down. No angles, just straight down. And maybe I'm going to pull down a little reflection of my hill here, my little foothill. I don't know what's going to be back here, but maybe I'll have that going there too. So I have the reflections happening now. Oh, doesn't that look gorgeous? I hope you guys are happy with your paintings. This is so much fun. I enjoy sharing Bob's joy of painting with anybody who's interested in learning. I do offer private classes as well. If anybody wants something a little bit more in depth, my privates run about 4.5 to 5 hours long, depending upon the size of canvas. If anybody's interested in that, you can call me and set up a time to come and do that. I only do 1 to 2 people at a time right now because that seems to work best. And I'm just getting this excess color out now. Wiping off my brush. And this, I think, is a really good place for us to take our break. Oh, hello, everybody. I guess we're back. So let's see, where are we now? We need some more closer, not foothills, but some little hills here in the foreground that we can actually bring some more trees onto. And I know sometimes Bob adds those underneath the trees when he's done with the trees, but I have some of my trees I want kind of open. So I want to make sure that we're not having just air behind them or water behind them. I want a little bit of green. So I'm taking my 1-inch brush again and I'm loading it up with some of this green color, what I've been using to make these trees in the background. As we get closer, the colors are more vibrant, so it's okay if our hills are a little darker as they're closer to us. And I'm just going to start tapping in here. And I'm going to make these trees kind of come down so I can still see this reflection of the water behind. And so maybe they don't even go all the way back there. Maybe I'm going to start here. And I'm going to kind of bring it out like that. And I'm just tapping. And again, I just loaded my brush the one time. And I'm tapping, bringing it closer and closer to fill in that bottom edge because we want those bottom edges to be flat because there's going to be a little bit more water here in the front. Or maybe there's not, I'm not sure yet. And it's your world, it's up to you. If you want a little more water in the front, we can leave some water in the front. And if we're going to do that, we'll probably want to go ahead and pull some of that water down, just like that. And see at the edge here, I'm only pulling it a little way, but as I go back, there's more hill to reflect. So I'm going to pull down a little further. I'm going to tap a little bit more and then pull down, pull down, pull down. So I get that nice reflection and then just kind of sweep it to the side. Oops. So I got a little blob here right at the edge of my land, and I'm just going to take my little wet wipe and kind of tap that out. I don't want to get rid of all my reflection or anything, so I just tapped it a little bit to get rid of that little blob that I did. So that's a good indication that I should probably clean out my brush again before I do some more of that pulling down of stuff. And I'm just wiping out the excess and then pulling that down, pulling it across. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So again, I'm loading my brush with that same color. And let's see, I'm going to bring this one out. And again, I'm kind of flattening out that bottom edge, maybe even making it go in the other direction so it's more kind of triangular right there. And then I can see my reflections back here in the back. And then on this one, I'm going to pull some reflection down too. Maybe get a little bit more on my brush. And then we're going to start on some bigger trees. So I'm going to go back to my fan brush and I have it loaded up with that same green we used for these trees back here. And we're going to start with a little fir tree or an evergreen or a pine tree, whatever you want to call it. One of those ones that's green all year long. One of those little happy trees that Bob likes to paint. So I'm going to kind of decide where I want one. And I think I'm going to put one, a nice tall one, right over here. And we're going to put just the trunk right here at the top. Helps to make those little noises, just like Bob said. And then I'm going to load up my brush again and swipe, flip. So I've got a nice coverage on both sides. And now I want to start my branches kind of up here at the top, but not all the way at the top edge. I want some of that pointy part still sticking up before I start branches. So I'm going to just barely the corner of my brush going in there, tapping. And as I'm tapping, I'm zigzagging back and forth. And as I go down, I start with just this little very tip of the corner of this brush, but as I go down, I'm using more of the surface to where when I get down to the bottom of the tree, I'm using this whole front edge. But at the top, I'm just using that one corner. So I'm going to flip it and I'll do it again. Here we go. And we're kind of zigzagging back and forth until I've got the whole edge of the brush, making that tree. And again, I'm going to load up my brush, swipe, swipe, swipe on one side, flip it, swipe, swipe, swipe on the other side, and then come back up and look at that tree. Oh my goodness, it's looking gorgeous. And I'm just back and forth until I sit it right down on that hill. There we go. That's our first tree. And what does Bob say? Every little tree needs a friend, because we want these to be happy trees, and everybody can be happy if they have a little friend. So we're going to give this tree a little friend, maybe right here. I'm going to put my next trunk there, load up my brush again. I did pick up a little bit of that snow when I scraped through there. That's okay. Just blend it right in. And then again, I'm going to start with my corner, and I'm just going to tap, 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 and then kind of start zigzagging back and forth, back and forth. And if this tree kind of runs into the other tree, that's okay. They're friends. They're happy together. There we go. Got those nice trees going. Now, I want to put a couple more of this kind of tree in on the other side. So again, I'm going in, swipe, 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 flip, swipe, 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 loading up with that dark green color. And I think I'm going to put one right about here. And I pulled that trunk way down, but I didn't really have to. And I'm loading up my brush again, and I'm going to start tapping. Again, a little bit below the top. And as I tap back and forth, I get my nice little evergreen tree. And it looks right now like this is standing out in the water, but I'll fix that, don't worry. And then of course this tree, he needs a little friend because those other guys are on the other side of the water. He can't get near them, so he needs a little friend on his side of the water. So we're swipe, swipe, swiping, flip, swipe, swipe, swiping, flip. Got your brush nice and loaded on both sides. And again, we'll put a little tree right there. And we're going to give him little branches too. And he's right there next to that guy. All right, so on these trees, we didn't bring our trunks quite as far down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife now, and we're going to pull in some of this brown mix that we did. This is our Christmas brown. This is the one that was red and green, and it gave us such a nice color brown. We're going to pull some of that out onto our palette, just like we did when we were doing mountains and snow and shadows. And then I'm going to get a little roll, just a little roll, and we're going to tap right down the center. Tap, tap, tap. It doesn't have to be solid. Just tap, tap, tap. Maybe there where that blue is, we're gonna see it. And then I'm gonna get another little bit more on my roll of paint on my knife there. And then again, we're gonna tap, tap, tap. So we can see the trunk here and there, and we're gonna do the same thing on these ones. So you can kind of see it, and it doesn't have to be solid. And then if we want the tops of our trees to be extra pointy, we can take the knife. I'm actually going to wipe off that excess brown that I had on there because I don't want to make a big brown blob at the top of my tree. But we can take our knife and lay it right on the center of the tree and then kind of slide it up. And that just pushes some of that paint up into the sky to make it nice and pointy. Because if you've ever seen evergreens, they got nice pointy tops. Or some of them do. There's all different kinds. Some of them, the branches kind of point up, more like a Christmas tree. Some of them kind of point down or hang down. There's just all different kinds. I love looking at trees. I love trees. I love painting trees. One of my favorite trees is a rainbow eucalyptus. They have those in Hawaii, and the bark is purple and green and orange, and they're just gorgeous. So we've got these trees done. Now we need some highlights on those, and that's why we didn't really have to fill in the trunk all the way down, because we're going to put some highlights on these trees. So I'm going to clean my fan brush off so we can put some snow on these trees, because we got like lots of snow on those mountains in the back. So I'm going to take my let's fold this the other way so I have a clean side so you can see. I'm going to take my fan brush and lay it down on a paper towel. And I don't want to cut into the bristles. I want to kind of just slide the paint off of it onto the paper towel. And then I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing. And that gets out a lot of that excess paint so that we can clean it easier. And then I'm also going to take it and squeeze it between my paper towel edges and squeeze it to get out that excess paint, because I don't want this to be too green when I go to paint my snow onto my trees. So I've got a wet wipe now, and I'm just going to kind of clean out that excess green out of my fan brush. Now, if you do have thinner, which was one of the recommendations, that you get thinner so that not only you can thin your paint if you need to, but you can also clean your brushes when we're done, because oil paint brushes don't clean with soap and water. They need thinner or mineral spirits or some kind of odorless turpenoid. So if you don't have the Bob Ross brand, Weber makes a great turpenoid, and I think it's actually they're the ones who made Bob Ross's thinner for so long, his odorless thinner. So I've got my thinner here, and I actually pre-poured some into this little container, and I've got a lid on it because even though the thinner is odorless, it has fumes, and you could be getting dizzy or getting a headache and you wouldn't even know why because you can't smell it. So I don't want to wash this in here. I just want to dip it in so it gets some of the thinner onto the brush, and then I'm bringing it to a clean paper towel and squeezing out that excess green. So you can see I got a lot more color out of it after I dipped it. And I may want to dip it once or twice more so I get that green out. And again, I'm not muddying up the thinner with the brush by swishing it around in there. I'm just getting a little bit of the thinner onto the brush and then bringing it to my paper towel. That way we get a nice clean brush, and we still have clean thinner for the next brush or for the next application. So we're going to probably mix some thinner with our paint at some point so that we can continue on. So that's pretty clean. I'm wiping it on my palette. I'm not getting a lot of color off of there. I did get a lot of color off with the thinner. We want to make sure that the excess thinner is all squeezed out of our brush so we're not thinning our paint with it when we go to load our brush. So that's pretty good. I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to load up, and I'm going to actually use my little wet wipe here to clean off the area. When I was mixing that green earlier and that blue, I got some blue on my palette underneath my white. So I don't want to get too much of that into my white color when I load my paint. So I'm just wiping that off. Like I said, these baby wipes are great for everything. You can wipe your palette, you can wipe your canvas, you can wipe your hands. Ooh, I need to. And they're nice because they're gentle. The baby wipes aren't gonna cause a lot of damage to your skin or anything, and you've got a clean brush. Okay, here we go. We are going to swipe, swipe, swipe some of that white down. I'm pulling that white out onto the palette, and I'm swipe, swipe, swiping, and then I'm flipping and pulling some more down. So I'm getting it nice and loaded up, and I definitely want to do a little push at the end on this time. So get a little bit of a ridge of paint right there on the edge. Now, we're going to add some snow to our big trees. And we don't want to go in and touch every piece of green that we added. We're just going to kind of go back and forth kind of randomly as fast as we can, not too fast. We don't want you to hate your painting at the end, but I just want to go in and I'm going to tap kind of the way I did before, but like not trying to hit any particular Ooh, I picked up some brown there. So I tapped, and then I picked up some brown, so I'm wiping my brush off on a paper towel and then loading it again. I picked up some of that brown the brown from my trunk. And then I'm wiping it off again before I reload it. Because anytime you got paint on the canvas with the wet on wet technique, you're going to pick some of that wet up when you paint. So again, I'm wiping off my brush, loading it up, swipe, 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 flip, swipe, 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 flip. We can even add a little bit of the thinner at this point. So I just dipped the corner of my brush into the thinner, and now I'm bringing it into the white and just swipe, swipe, swiping to reload the brush. Now this paint will be thinner than what we have on the canvas. And one of the things that Bob always says is thin paint sticks to thick paint. So that's what we're doing here, is we want this to be thinner so we're not pulling off so much of the paint as putting on thinner paint on top of the thick paint that's already on our canvas. So I'm a little push at the end and I'm ready to go back to my trees. And tap, tap, tap. Oh, that's better. That thin paint really made a difference so that you can see the snow that I'm putting on my trees. And again, now I'm wiping off the edges onto my paper towel. And I'm going to load it up again with some of that thin white and push. And we're going to go right back in here and you can't really see from where one tree stops and the other one starts. And again, loading up my brush, I kind of want to cover up this little area at the top where I kind of mushed around my brown. There we go. Those look nice. So we're going to wipe off the edge of our brush again, get all that brown and green off, and then reload it with some of that thinned out white. If you need to dip into the thinner again, if you have thinner, if not, you can use some of your liquid white to thin the white. You can grab some of that if you have any of that left out. We kind of set that aside after we did our canvas at the beginning. If you have some left, you can always mix a little bit of your liquid white into the titanium white, and that'll give you a nice thin white you can use as well to highlight your painting or your trees. So I'm gonna go back again and again. I'm kind of just zigzagging back and forth to give that a nice little highlight, and then wiping off my brush edges and then reloading it again with some of that either titanium white thinned with thinner or with liquid white. Either one will do, because that'll make it thin and it'll stick to our trees. Thin paint to thick paint. Ooh, I got a lot of snow on that one. And that guy. There we go. Okay, so I've got that one. That does it for our evergreens or our firs or our, what else did I call them? Pine trees. And I'm wiping off my fan brush and I'm going to set it aside. Okay, so now we want to do some deciduous trees. So those would be the trees that lose their leaves at the end of, summer. When we go into fall, they start changing colors. We want to start off with maybe some trunks. So I'm going to take my knife again, and I'm going to pull out some of that brown into a nice flat area. Wipe off the excess. And I'm going to get a new paper towel and get a little roll. And I'm going to put a tree right over here. And I'm going to turn my knife a little bit. So when I was doing these little skinny trunks that we put in our evergreens, I was kind of putting my knife straight into the canvas like this. But here I've got my little roll and I want a little bit of width on these deciduous tree trunks. So I'm going to kind of bring it in here and maybe do that. Kind of pull it to the side a little bit and then get some more roll of paint. And then I can and I'm just kind of pulling it a little bit, and it's going to get skinnier as it goes up. So we maybe want to pull off a branch here and there, and I'm just using the side of the knife to kind of slide up a branch like that. Maybe make the main trunk skinnier. And that should do for a starter for that tree. And we'll put some land underneath that one too. I'm just kind of straightening out the trunk here a little bit. So Bob does tree trunks with different brushes at different times. So sometimes he uses a knife, sometimes he uses a fan brush, so I can come in and straighten out the edges of my tree trunk with a fan brush and then bring out some branches. And then I've got a nice little trunk there. Sometimes he uses a liner brush, which he'll use then paint thinner also to thin the paint with as well when he's doing little thin branches on some of his trees. But since we don't have a liner brush today, we're using our knife and we're using our fan brush. So I've got my tree here going pretty good. I'm going to start with my 1-inch brush again. And I'm going to load my brush up. Again, we're going to be pulling in some of that darker color and pulling it into the green. Excuse me. I need to take a sip of water. Okay. Now, I'm pulling that brush into the green, flipping it, pulling it into the green, and then I'm tapping, just like we did when we were doing our foothills. And I'm going to tap, and on this tree, I'm going to use this brush, the 1-inch brush, to kind of tap in some kind of flat-ish, kind of spread out groups of leaves. So I'm just going to come in here and tap it, and then I'm going to load it again, tapping into my green. And you can have some kind of floating over the trunk and branches. And then just keep loading it and tapping into the palette, and then loading some more tree up here. I'm trying to make them look not so flat by rounding them out a little bit. And I'm loading again, a little bit of that mountain mix into my green, and tapping. And there we have a nice tree. I'm actually going to give this guy a little branch out here and make a little offshoot of the trunk, because it seems to be he's kind of leaning off the canvas there, and I want to kind of pull him back this way. So I'm going to give him a little baby tree coming out of his trunk there. And I'm just tapping to get those leaves kind of spread out. Okay, so I'm going to give him a little trunk there at the bottom. I just got a tiny little roll of brown on my knife there, and I'm just going to bring this up like this. Just like that. There we go. Now it kind of helps pull him back in. So like I said, there's no mistakes, only happy accidents. So if you ever have anything that's kind of leaning out one way, you can pull it back this way by giving it some weight over this way. And that's what we did with this little branch and this little blob of green here. And we're going to put a little snow on this tree as well. So I've got this very green paintbrush, and I'm going to scrape out the excess green now. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, let's put some more land down because this tree needs a place to sit. So before I clean that brush out, I'm going to give that tree a little place to sit and bring it out. Bring that out and bring it down here. And then on this side, I'm just going to bring it all the way down. Guess we didn't need the reflection on that side. So I'm going to load up a little bit more of that green. And you can see when you bring in more paint, you can actually give dimension to your hill. So I'm bringing in like another little rolling area in front of this one that's behind. Okay, now we can clean that brush. So I'm going to take it and clean it out really good, really well, because we're going to add some snow to this tree with this brush. So again, this is a place where we might want to dip into our paint thinner. And I'm just dipping, but I'm not washing it in there. It got a little bit of green in there, but not a lot. And then I'm wiping on a paper towel to get all this excess green out. You can see there's a lot in there. And it's so much, it's actually going through my paper towel onto my palette here. So that's okay though. I can fix it with a wet wipe, a baby wipe. Okay, so I'm getting a clean paper towel again. Now, for those of you who don't have thinner, hopefully you all do, but if you don't have any, you can be still, scraping out the excess paint with a knife like this. Then using a paper towel to wipe out excess paint. And I keep folding my paper towel over and over until I've used up all the surfaces to get that excess paint and thinner now out. But if you don't have thinner, that's okay. You can use your paper towels and your baby wipes. Hopefully you have those. And we're just cleaning out, cleaning out, cleaning out. We want all that excess green to be out so that when we put our paintbrush into the white, it shows up as some snow on our tree. And I'm going to just wipe this area up. You can see this little palette paper wipes off fairly easily with the baby wipes. I think I said that in the prep video, but now I go to a paper towel and look, it's so much less paint coming off. And I can use a wet wipe, same way. There's a lot less paint coming off. So now I know when I go to add white to my tree to add some snow on it, it's not going to be all green. So we're going to take this one, go into our white, swipe, 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 swipe. And again, this has a little bit of that thinner or that liquid white in it from when we were doing the snow on the other trees, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. And I'm just tap, tap, tapping. So I have a nice loaded brush. You can see all that nice white on there. And I'm just going to tap over the areas on the canvas where we put these green leaf uh, groupings. I don't know what do they, is there, I wonder if there's a specific name, I'll have to look that up, for like the groupings of leaves on a tree. So I'm reloading my brush. I'm tap, tap, tapping again to get that nice thin white. Maybe I'm even adding a little bit more of that liquid white to make it, that'll thin it out and that'll help it to stick. And I'm just tapping in some, just not everywhere, just a little snow on my little green tree. Maybe a little bit more up here. Okay, so far this doesn't really look like fall. So now is the time we're gonna get into our fall colors. So I'm wiping off the white from my brush onto a wet wipe and onto my paper towel that has just a little bit of green. Getting rid of that excess white on my brush. Getting rid of some bristles too. And just kind of cleaning that all off. And then we're going to set that brush aside. And we're going to pick up our black handled 1-inch oval brush. Now mine has a little blue on the tips because I was cleaning up something earlier. Okay. All right. So on this brush, when you load it, I don't want you to flip it over. I only want you to load it in one direction. So you're just going to pull, 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 and then maybe do a little push or do a little tap, tap, but you're not going to flip it over. So we want to load it in one direction only. So I'm going to start with yellow. And I'm going to load this up. And again, I'm just loading one side of the brush. And this is the oval brush. These are great for foliage. I love these. These are good for bushes and for trees as well. I'm going to take just a tiny bit of this orange and alizarin crimson mixture. Or actually it was a yellow and alizarin crimson, but it turned orange. And you can see that just a little bit of that can take over the whole yellow. So that's why I had this one separate blob of yellow. I just wanted it a little bit less yellow. So now it's kind of more a yellowy orange. So now I'm tapping. I'm tapping in the brush and you can see it's making all these little ridges in my paint on the palette, and that's what it's going to do on the canvas too. So when I look at the edge of my brush, there are no blobs of paint here, but it's all kind of spread out from me tapping, tapping, tapping. So we're going to go to the canvas now. And we are going to put in, I'm thinking I want a deciduous tree. Where do I want it? I want it right here. And I've got this snow on my mountain here that's going to probably interfere a little bit. So I don't want to go too high up in front of my mountain, but I also don't want it to look like it's purposely under the mountain. So I'm going to get some of that paint loaded up into my brush and I'm going to kind of tap, and you can see the round bristles leave a nice little kind of rounded tree part. Now I need a clean paper towel to wipe off all that white and gray that I picked up from the mountain. And then I'm going to tap, 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 load my brush again. And again, I've got that nice color right there. And then I'm going to put another little round right there. And then I will wipe off that excess color that I picked up and go back, tap, tap, tapping into my color on my palette. Oh, and I can do a little push too. Mark, will you show them the canvas or the palette really quick? So I'm tapping, and then I can do a little push, and that kind of gets me a little bit more paint on the ends of the bristles. And then I'm gonna, so we're kind of getting this in, and we're showing, like, you can see the mountain behind the tree, but you can see the yellow in front of the mountain too. So that's what we kind of want. We want a little bit of that yellow showing through, or the background showing through the yellow. So that's why we're not swiping when we tap this color onto the canvas. We just want to put it down and pick it up. So again, I'm pushing into my palette, and then I'm kind of turning the brush so I get these kind of rounded leaf groupings. And this is a tree that, you know, the leaves are turning colors. So let's see, maybe we'll put another one right here. And again, that green from behind is getting onto my brush. So I could take a little liquid white actually and put it in with my yellow here. I just dabbed into my liquid white, which I have on my little plate still from when I prepped my canvas, and I can mix it in with my yellow and a little bit of that red, orange. And then push, push, push. And again, because this is a thinner paint now, because we added that liquid white, it should stick better. So I'm tapping, and then a little push at the end, and then we go back to the canvas. And I'm going to maybe put another grouping right there. And see how I turn the brush so I get that kind of rounded shape of my, and boy, that little bit of liquid white made a huge difference in the ability of that paint to stick right there, didn't it? Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more of that orange into it again, and then tap, 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 and push, and then you can kind of take these blobs of leaves, I don't have a better name for them, down as far as you want, you know, and have as many or as little as you want. This is kind of a taller, skinnier tree, but with these little blobs of leaves or groupings of leaves all there. So once I have it like this, I can go back in, and I'm going to use my knife again for a tree trunk, but I'm going to use the short edge because I don't want to put a solid trunk all the way through. So I'm just going to get a little roll on the short edge of my knife right there. See? And then I'm going to come in here and add some little branches coming up. So I'm not going to turn it sideways. I'm going to leave it this way. So just that barely edge gets some of that paint on there. And you can make your branches, and then as I use it up, I can turn it a little bit more. This one maybe going this way, and this one maybe going right there, and maybe having a little one going out this way. And then I'm just scraping in a fatter trunk at the bottom. And there we have another little tree, and that one's kind of leaning too. Now, this one, you can see I kind of went down into my reflection with the trunk there. I can just pull that down. So it just looks like I'm pulling down the reflection. And then maybe I want to take a little bit of that yellow and pop some down here, just lightly in the water. So it looks like there's a reflection of some of that yellow down here. Okay, so we've got that one, and let's do a nice bright orangey tree. So now that we've got the yellow, done, we can go ahead and take the brush just as it is and pull into some of that orangey that we mixed, that orangey color. And again, I'm pulling, pulling, pulling in one direction and then tap, tap, tapping, and then doing a little push, a little push. And if it looks like your bristles are all stuck together, you probably got too much paint on there. So I'm going to tap over here in a blank area of my palette to get some of that excess paint off and then do my little push. I think it's okay. It doesn't look solid now. Sorry, there. You can see it's pushing the bristles apart. So I'm going to get some more of that on there. And again, we can add a little bit of the liquid white to thin it so it'll stick to the canvas. And I needed more color now. I kind of paled it all out with white. Okay, I'm pulling some more of that orangey color in and tap, tap, tapping and a little push. And then I'm going to add another tree over here on the side, similar to this one, but it's more darker. And I'm just putting my little leaf groupings there. And you can kind of see it. It's kind of like we're only seeing half of that tree. I'm loading up my brush again, maybe putting another one right up here at the top. So that's a tall one over there, and we can do the same thing with our palette knife. Get a nice tiny little roll on the short edge of the knife of the brown. And then just go in and maybe have some little branches showing here. And maybe we don't even see the main trunk of that tree. Okay, I used up all my brown. Let's get another little roll. And then we've got that. So let's do some little bushes. So we can use any of these same colors. We can use the yellow, we can use some alizarin crimson straight. I'm going to just grab some of that and put it right on the end of my brush and then tap, tap, tap into my palette. So I'm getting that red to come out. Again, I just put a little bit on the end of my brush and then tap, tap, tapped into my palette to get it to spread out. And then I'm going to maybe add a little bush here and there. Maybe I'll put one right here. And again, you can see as I load the brush, let me see, or as I apply the brush to the canvas, I'm not swiping on the canvas. I'm just like tapping. Let's see, let's put another red one maybe over here. I'm just kind of pushing those bristles and lifting them. So now I'm kind of leaving an open center and a little bit open in the middle here where I can go in and add some sticks and branches for those little tiny bushes. And again, I'm going in here, I'm going to grab some of that orange, put some more orange bushes, tap, tap, tapping on my canvas or on my palette with the brush, and then maybe put, let's get a darker one over into that tree. I want a real dark one. Maybe this one has a little brown in it too. And I'm gonna, make that one really dark. And I'm just gonna tap, tap, tap. And then I'm pulling in another one. Let's see, maybe this one will be orange. So let's pull some of that orange in. And then tap, 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 and a little push. And let's see, let's put a little orange bush right next to that one. And now these aren't finalized yet because we're going to put some little highlights on them as well. And then maybe another one up here. And I'm actually going to wipe a little bit of this orangey red out of my brush onto a paper towel so I can add some yellowish to the bushes to highlight them, or some white to the bushes to highlight them. So I'm just wiping out excess color right now from my brush. Okay, perfect. And I'm just wiping off that excess there, and then I'm going to go into my yellow, grab a bunch of my yellow, maybe a little liquid white there, and softening that yellow up so it's nice and thin. And again, tap, tap, tapping, and a little push. And then I can go in on these little bushes and add a nice little highlight to the outside. And that one. Ooh, look at that. And then loading my brush again and adding some little, maybe that's another little bush right in front of that other one. And then let's highlight that guy. And maybe that guy. And you can have as many or as few as you want. And then we want to take our knife, and I'm making sure it's clean because I don't want to put any accidental colors in there. And we're going to scrape in some little branches and sticks into our bushes. So I just do these. I start from the bottom and scrape up. Give them a little dimension. And then I do the same thing. Kind of all coming out from the center so that it looks like they're all growing from one spot. No paint on the knife, just scraping paint away so it looks like there's like little sticks growing inside there. Like that's the part of the bush, right? So sometimes I like fork some off of each other. And I just do that in all of these little bushes. And then some over here. I wipe it off in between so I'm not putting that color back. And that's about it. If there's anything else, we could just kind of smooth off these little reflections here so that they're not so sharp, just by pulling to the side a little bit. And other than that, we've got our painting. I hope you've all enjoyed yourself this evening. For our first PBS KVIE Bob Ross virtual paint along. Hopefully we'll be able to have more in the future. And hopefully you'll join us again. If you are interested in private lessons, I offer private lessons right now for 1 to 2 people here in my home in Rancho Cordova. And if you have any questions about the painting we did today, or while you're watching the playback, feel free to give me a call. You can reach me at 916-767-9876, or you can email me at Rita@paintingwithrita.com. If you'd like to follow me on my Facebook page, that's at Painting with Rita also, and my website is paintingwithrita.com. Best time to call me is between 11 and 7, 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. And I do private classes during the week as well as weekends, day or evening. If you have any questions, give me a call.